Here, everyone's here. Oh, great. Cool. Well, it's good to see all of you. Some new faces as well. Hopefully enjoyed some musical vibes to start. We're gonna dive into a number of things. Oh, Viviana is exhausted and great. Wonderful. Sometimes being exhausted is a great way to surrender, isn't it? I find some of the best meditations, especially when you get that kind of like mid-afternoon tiredness sometimes. Um, those can be some of the most profound meditations, actually, because your body's already kind of asleep. So, you almost like sink into like a sleep paralysis or something like that. And the kind of epiphanies or insights, because in that realm, it's very easy to tap into the subconscious, because you're already kind of right there. Your body's so asleep, you're almost like already tapping into that layer. So I think I've always really enjoyed when I'm really tired. So yeah, that's nice. For today, we're going to, we'll see where it takes us as usual. I mean, never really have a complete plan for these, as we often go into a lot of profound things just based on what you guys have to share. If there's any questions or intentions that we'd like to discover. I did have a kind of slight intention for today, as I shared yesterday, which was just kind of reviewing a little bit some of the core methods and processes we've gone over the past little while. We're not going to go into all of them, but just as kind of a reminder, and then just giving a bit more of a structure on how we deal with some of these processes, or how they work in with maybe some of the other methods that we're engaging or utilizing, or getting into other courses and freedom teaching work. Because we've gone through quite a few different styles of meditative inquiry, of breath work. Last week we're getting into some journaling practices, so I'd be interested to hear if anyone was explored those at all. But at the same time, they kind of all kind of connect through a similar thread, right? And that similar thread, based on some of the core traditions that we're exploring, like a more self-inquiry, like non-dual path, or typical like Vipassana style meditation, which has been expanded through some of the energy work or emotional resolution processes that we've engaged, right? And one of which, and the core of which, we could say, is just this element or essence of inquiry or investigation, right? What does investigation really mean? And I feel this can be kind of a nuanced thing, and even for people who are more advanced in this process, it may still kind of we may kind of miss it, where investigation and contemplation can be kind of very similar, in the sense that, okay, if I'm mentally engaging something through the process of my mind, and the process of, asking questions, or, observing certain things that are arising, and then exploring those little rabbit holes of thought and perception, say it's on a particular topic, or some trauma, or some trigger, or something that's arising in the body. This is kind of that, one of the elements of that. But this element is a simultaneous process to the actual movement of consciousness, or the movement of awareness, attention, or whatever's perceived as that, right into the direct sensations, feelings, and charges that arise within the field. And this takes a lot of practice, because it's kind of like, we use this one example, I think last week or the week before, where when we're going through this process, we're engaging it in a more detailed and more direct way. So we're not leaving things up for generalization, right? Because generalization is often how we get into a lot of suffering. And we see this in the world, a lot of labeling, say like, this group believes one thing, this group believes the other. And anyone who resembles even an ounce of what the other group thinks or believes, they're immediately generalized and labeled as that. And that generalization creates a lot of suffering, because just because someone represents themselves in one particular way doesn't mean that's all of who they are. And this happens on the simplest of ways, even in our intimate relationships, where maybe somebody has commonly done something in a certain way, right? And so then we say something like, oh, well, you're always like that, or they're always like this, so they'll never do something different, or there never will be a different way, or they're just like, that's just the way they are. And it's kind of this overgeneralization, not just within the dynamics of their psyche, like painting them all as one thing, but also within the dynamics of time. Because if in one period they've acted in a particular way and we blanket generalize, then naturally that blanket generalization actually expands throughout all of the timeline that we can perceive of them, future and past. So it just crystallizes perceptions in the mind. And of course, this is all just external projections to how we may do this within ourselves. And that was the example we were giving, right? Like if we said, oh, I'm feeling pain in my hand, so my hand is in pain. But then when you really zone in, you actually realize, well, the pain is actually just in this one little area, right? And then when you zoom in and investigate even further, you realize it's actually dispersed and it's in a couple different areas and it's all around one little region. And if you keep going in, you actually start to see and you start to feel into those sensations. That's actually how the healing starts to work, right? Because healing at the core is our ability to see through the crystallization of thought, or how we've created a belief and turned it into a material form, right? This is how a lot of modern science is now seeing that all physical ailments are at the core emotional or energetic in their root, because that rooting is crystallizing in stronger and denser forms and then eventually manifesting in the physical dimension. And then we start to see that as illness or challenge and circumstance and, relationship issues and things happening in our life that kind of blindside us and all that. These are all just, again, if we just understand this expanded bubble of our aura, our holographic reality, everything that we perceive is essentially a crystallized charge that is held in place. So when the way we've been looking at this over the past while is recognizing that, even if sometimes we often have perceptions, in the head or in the torso region, but sometimes we may feel a perception that's even outside the body, like a charge or an energy that's somewhere around the body. And that can be investigated in the same way. And that same way is by way of us understanding that we are this energy and awareness, and we're not separate from this particular thing, right? Again, like saying, oh, I have this charge in my hand, that the hand and the arm is not separate from the body, it's actually equal. But it's very easy that we start to think that situations and people and things in the world are separate from us because, of course, well, it's not a part of my physical body. But when we start to understand the energetics of the hologram, and we essentially recognize that every single thing, literally every single thing we could possibly perceive, and we do perceive each day, is within our hologram. Now, there's a fine line between believing that we are sole creators of our reality, in the sense that, oh, I create everything, and all of you guys are all just projections of my consciousness, so none of you actually exist. You're all just a part of, we could see how this becomes very illogical, and it doesn't actually have any basis in the third dimensional reality. But there is truth in that, and there's truth in the fact that we co-create together. So when we interact with certain people, and those certain people say, like how people are often like, oh, I don't want to have any negative talks, or I don't want to talk about anything negative. So someone comes and they start talking about something negative, they're like, oh, get away from me. You know what I mean? Like this type of thing. There is some basis to drawing boundaries and spending time with people that obviously uplift you and things. But at the core of that, we have to understand that the reason why it's coming into our field is for a particular reason. Now, that may be so that we can draw a certain boundary or be clear in our communication with things. But it also is a process of us just revealing to us what is under the surface and what's coming, to just kind of be seen, essentially, right? So this process of investigation is quite complex, and we can see already how it's not just this element of doing these meditations and engaging. It's really a process of continuously being aware, in a perpetual process of awareness, and that awareness not sugar-coated by the fantasies and imaginations of what we want things to look like or what we prefer things to look like, but specifically how they actually are. And the quickest way to any sort of healing, as we've explored, is by engaging things as they are, not how, and in any potential way where we would like it to be in some other way, right? And one way that this actually can be explored in a really beautiful thing, we went through this last week, so this is kind of like jumping into another process. And you guys, some of you already have a lot of access to these recordings, so you have to go back. And some of you who don't, you can message me and we can, I can link those. But when we're understanding this process of self-honesty, which we've explored this past couple of weeks, self-honesty is the dynamic or engagement where we're being aware and we're looking at very clearly where there may be particular situations that we're essentially trying or attempting to convince ourselves in particular ways that things are a different way than how they are, right? They're they're better than how we think they are. They're maybe they're worse. I mean, the funny thing is the majority in, say, the more new age or spiritual or whatever dynamic are coming because the majority of people in our society essentially oscillate from very extreme dynamics of attempting to convince oneself that something is much better than how things are, or on the opposite, much worse, because it's like that dramatic mind, right? So the moment that there's some exciting emotion, it's like, oh, I'm experiencing an emotion, exciting, it's nice. So everything is just everything amazing and so good. And wow, look at this. Like, and it's kind of like this endless attempt to just convince oneself of how good things are and how amazing things are, just by feeling a little bit of excitement or joy or something. And you can kind of see this through social media. You notice this within your own tendencies, where if you start attempting to talk about something or go into something and really try and keep going on it, convince yourself of it and talk to everyone about it. And, it's like you can start to uproot the tendency there where if we need to constantly be affirming something with such energy, there may be a question as to what really, if that's actually there, if that's actually the case, or if you're just attempting to really convince and affirm something that may not be right there. Now, obviously, affirmations are a beautiful thing, but we have to go to the basis, the root of where that affirmation is coming, right? It's like if someone's in like the shithole, they're like, oh, just love and light, we're all good, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. You can see how that can be very challenging, right? Eventually, that'll become very challenging. So that's one side. Then the other side is, yeah, well, we make a drama out of things that are not so good, and just run that course. And that's a lot of where people are coming from. And then you get into more new age styles, and then you go in the opposite direction, and then you start to find the balance where, yeah, really actually affirming things in one direction is not so different than affirming in the other direction. And it's not so much about becoming neutral either. It's just simply about accepting reality as it is and being willing. Like we went into last week where I said, what if you spend time in your journaling, which I'm sure you've done, where the journaling is not just writing about, things you desire or the vision board or, just what you did today. I mean, that's all valid, but exploring and engaging and very much acknowledging the darker aspects of, or whatever is arising. And that could be a dark thing, that could be a not so dark thing, or anything in between. And acknowledging it with a very deep sense of clarity, right? And again, honesty. So if we're in the journaling process and we just acknowledge, say, a behavior that really isn't so kind, or really isn't so conducive of something that we desire, well, we're writing that out, or we're exploring that in I like written form. I think it's very helpful, but it could be also talking. You could talk to someone about it, right? Where you're acknowledging, hey, this is the behavior that I'm acknowledging about myself, or what I have just done to you in some way, and I'd like to express it. I'd like to talk about it. I'd like to share it. Especially with the fact, I mean, it's majority women here, and I find that women very much in their feminine essence are going to be much more in tune with being willing to share emotions exactly as they are, feelings exactly as they are. Now, you obviously need to feel safe to do that, and a lot of women in these days are not feeling so safe, which is unfortunate. But at least in this space, or for each of you, if you have people in your life where that is an aspect or a possibility, right? And that's why I love to just encourage people to do it with themselves, because that's the way we foster that, and then we start to meet people or come across people who can also support that. And I think that's very important as females. Now, for males as well, and of course, I don't want to get into this discussion too much, the gender topic, but if we're talking about feminine qualities, masculine qualities, feminine quality, which is in all of us, but more predominantly in females, is going to be an honest willingness to share feelings without needing to control them, right? Without needing to manipulate them, right? Without needing to act it out. Like the whole, like the kind of dynamic which you just shared of like, love and light, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. This is kind of very similar to the feminine essence, just trying to play it cool, and not express what they're actually feeling. And this is in all people, but say the feminine essence, feminine quality is, I'm going to share this as good, bad, or ugly as it is, whatever it is. I'm willing to share this feeling and put it on the table, right? That's the feminine essence. Playing it cool is manipulative. It's, I'm feeling a different way, but I'm just going to play it cool. And I'm not going to show my cards, or I'm not going to put it on the table, or I'm not going to present it. I'm not going to be honest with myself or with the other or whatever, because I'm just going to play it cool. Right. But that's a very, that's more, personally, that's a more of a masculine tendency. And that's what the imbalance on our planet is existing in now, is everyone just plays it cool. Right. We just play it cool. Everything's fine. It's all good, you know, and then we explode, midlife crisis or dark night of the soul or whatever. Right. So, so we've been exploring this very much the past couple of weeks, right? Is this element of self-honesty, and it's very important. It's very important because yeah, I explained this as well last week in a one-on-one session I had, where I was discussing with somebody that our ability to process emotion in the dynamic of relationship is going to be very much dependent on our ability to share things in the moment of how we feel in a kind and balanced way, but in an honest way. Because if there's an inability to speak emotion, essentially, then this is how we get ourselves in a lot of doo-doo, because we have people running all over us when we don't want them to run all over us. Obviously, we have situations that we find ourselves where energy exchanges are not balanced. We may have situations where we're just not voicing what we truly feel about something, and then that just builds up things, you know, for whatever period of time. So essentially what we were discussing with that individual is the period of delay that you have from what you're feeling to when you express it is going to be equal. It's like we could probably make a math equation, you know. It's like the period of time that we have from the moment you're feeling something to the moment it's being expressed in some form is essentially the duration of suffering, for the most part. You know, of course, we need to take some time to process also, but often it's going to result in unnecessary suffering, right? And then how we will compensate that is we're going to go and try and learn and do a bunch of workshops and try and learn a bunch of meditation techniques and things like that to go and process that emotion, when actually one of the quickest ways is just tell the truth, right? I remember we did a 3-hour how to heal the throat chakra workshop like 3 years ago. And like pretty much it all came back to just telling the truth. Like as much as there's all these other practices, the chanting, and, you know, we do all kinds of things, but at the core is we just speak and act and tell the truth, because that's how the energy is expressing through the throat, right? So yeah, very nice. So a couple comments here, I'll just dismiss them. Safe space, yeah, okay, nice, cool. All right, well, so we covered two things there, two the core practices. We're going to jump into meditation now, and we're going to combine a few of them. The other one we've been doing over the past while, which some of you may have not done, is the pranic breathing, right? Where we get that cellular breathing going. You know, and I hope people have taken this to heart on an ongoing basis, you know, ever since this technique came to me almost a year ago, it's been a very extensive process of engaging this throughout the day, right? And one way I really like to use this this process, which we'll get into in a minute, especially for those who haven't done it before, is when we're engaging the cellular breathing, where every cell in the body's breathing. This is how we're communicating and how we're assimilating information. So one of the ways in which I really like to engage this is when we're in nature and we go into new places. You can do this pretty much anywhere, actually, but everywhere you go, you're assimilating information. And especially when you're in nature and all the elements are kind of flowing and you're connected to them in that way, moving through that cellular breathing is a beautiful way to receive the information of the environment. So if we understand that this bubble, this 360-degree bubble, is how we're pulling in this information and then communicating that information back, like this oscillating bubble or flower, you know, any new environment that we're in, this is how we're essentially like emanating our essence, if you will. So it can be it's a very beautiful experience. It can be very subtle and very enjoyable. You know, when you're in different nature environments where, I mean, we all, you know, done breath work and things in the past, but this process of really connecting to these subtle layers, right, of cellular breathing is how we really start to connect to the subtle layers within nature. And that'd probably open up a lot of things, if you do that consistently, being able to talk to trees and shit, like plants and animals, and bring the animals to you, or be able to read the synchronicities, right? Because when we're in the world, like the modern world, where there's like billboards and numbers and a lot of digital stuff, reading synchronicity like through numbers and symbols and all that is going to be kind of in your face, right? It's like right there, it's all happening. I would say that a lot of people have actually become more accustomed to that type of reading of synchronicity than in nature, right? As much as some of us, maybe into like reading spirit animals and when animals come or things like that. But when you really start to tune into nature, you'll find that the synchronicities are actually it's not that they're more fun to read or whatever. It's actually, it can be more difficult initially, because it's not so like, oh, I saw this 777 or something like this, you know what I mean? Or a clear word or music, lyric or something like this. You're really having to tune in, and it actually it increases the fulfillment, because again, you're tuning into things that are alive, right? As much as numbers and words and things are alive, it's a bit different when you're in nature. So, I mean, I'm sure many of us are privy to this, but it's just another kind of reminder of spending the time with that, because it'll make you more subtly attuned to, and in a more balanced way, to some of the dynamics with synchronicity. Because remember, synchronicities can be inorganic on some level too, in the sense that we're dealing with a lot of technology stuff and AI dynamics, and yeah, it can get quite complex. So I won't get into that too much today, but yeah, so let's jump into this breathing practice, and then we'll see where it takes us. I've been talking a lot today, but some good topics, hopefully. So let's get comfy, and we'll go into this practice and then do some recap and Q&A after. So whether we're lying down or seated, that's all good. Just finding that kind of position, finding that aligned spine. Even when we're lying down, sometimes you kind of want the body to be like straight, and kind of things symmetrical. You just find that the energies kind of flow better when things are symmetrical. And so we'll take a couple deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth, just kind of relaxing with every breath, with every exhale into the body. So it's almost like through every exhale when you release, you're kind of sinking into a deeper layer within the body, and you can start to feel into those deeper layers of subtlety that exist there. So we'll just kind of do a wave of compassion through the body, where we'll start at the top of the head, and it's almost like a trickling filament, like diamond light that's coming down, that's filled with compassion. And this compassion is your own compassion. It comes from your own higher self or connected self, straight God source. And letting the trickle layers of that compassion just kind of flood through your body, down through the head, back to the neck, through the traps, down through the eyes and the jaw, and through the shoulders, the arms, down to the spine. And feeling it kind of trickling through the organs too. It's like everything, the nervous system, the blood is getting these trickling filaments of this compassionate light. So sometimes using the visuals or the intentions or the encryptions that we feel on particular things that ignite this compassion can be helpful. Maybe that's connected to like a child of yours, or how you would, just pet a puppy, or, or even if you don't need those visuals, just that connection of the deepest or simplest, subtlest compassion and gentleness for yourself, for your body. Move all the way down through the torso, to the pelvic region, all the way down through the legs, and down into the core of the earth. Like the energy will just kind of sink into the earth. And sometimes when you send that energy down to the earth, I mean, most of the time really, anything you send even into the sun or into the earth or into another, you may feel kind of like a rebound of the energy. So it's like you're communicating with the earth, and the earth is sending you back that kind of safe, like grandmother arm, if you will, like holding you in those arms in that gentle compassion. And so these waves of compassion that we've ignited here can naturally be expanded, and we can expand those through the breath. So some of us may not even need that. You may feel like you can already kind of send this energy as you like, and find it moving into the subtle layers. So into the thought forms, the mental layer, mental body, into the emotional body, to more of the etheric body, different layers of the energetic body. But some of us may feel called to use the breath to this. So we can do a very small, a very soft and gentle inhale through the nose. So you're pulling in that energy about 5 seconds at the minimum, maybe up to 8 or 10. And then as you feel, you can exhale through the nose. So it's in and out through the nose, and the same thing, about 5 to 10 seconds on the exhale. And you'd want the exhale to be a bit longer, if anything, if not equal. And same thing, we're breathing in that compassion through those filaments of diamond light, through the very subtle and gentle inhale. Same through the exhale. And so coming deeper with this breath, we're recognizing that it's not just coming into the lungs and through the nose, it's coming in through every cell in the body. So every one of our cells is breathing through this diamond light of compassion. And it's coming in 360 degrees. So every direction, moving through the skin and moving through every cell, and also tuning into that subtle essence of translucency, where it's like the whole body is translucent on some level, and the breath and this energy is just kind of moving through. These diamond filaments are moving through every crevice of the body. And so some of us may feel particular charges on topics or situations or energies in the body where it may be more pronounced. And this is where the direction of that attention can be focused there as the breath is moving. So it's as if you go to the core of that charge or that thought form, and you're breathing from that place now. So while everything in the whole body is breathing, you've just fixated your attention upon the breath oscillating through the inhale and exhale within that particular region. And you can kind of play with this and move the attention around as you like, or you can completely release from the breath altogether. You may find yourself just kind of sinking into what is and what is here. So whether you engage this through the process of focused attention on particular regions or points within the body or within the being, or it's expanded throughout the entirety of your anatomy. It's like every cell in your being is being touched by this breath that is breathing, and you can feel it all simultaneously breathing. Everything is alive. And even outside the body, every cell, every particle of creation of what makes up the wind or the water, or the structures around you, everything is also breathing. So with every breath that you take, everything is breathing on its own simultaneously. And through this breath, it's like you can feel this spaciousness in which it creates. And this spaciousness is what this natural piece of the self feels like. It's not high nor low. It's not in any particular place. It's just here. It's just this natural equanimity, this natural peace. And this spaciousness is within everything, no matter how it's appearing, even the things that feel stuck or charged or particularly challenging. This spaciousness or this peace is found within, let's say, this challenge or this thought or this idea, this sensation, this feeling, this charge. So essentially, all dynamics of any layer or any level of suffering is just a perpetual return to this perception, seeing through everything. And as you see through it, you're unlocking that energy, and that energy naturally will want to be moved. And that's why things like movement and of the body or of the sounds in your body, using sound, movement of other forms of creativity and connection, and intimacy. These are all ways in which this energy continues to move and not get stuck back within these same cycles of these same patterns. So as we continue to attune to this, at a certain point, like it's probably happened for some already, is the natural release of the breath will occur, and we will simply reside within that spaciousness. And this is where we've, and we'll come into those subconscious layers of mind and the creative insights or the clarity on particular situations, kind of quick understandings on particular subjects that previously may have been complex. This is all available in the space because naturally this spaciousness is where the void of creativity sparks from. So answers to our natural questions or particular subjects we'd like to focus on, just bringing them into view naturally kind of pulls us into an exploration of that topic, where the insights on that topic or the insights on that energy will kind of naturally blossom. So coming into this space is not like a static spot where we just arrive and then, exist in. for any set period of time. This can obviously fluctuate and change. And locking it in is not really even possible because we're just bringing attention there, and then the habits of and the cycles of the body may bring us out. But we can always kind of naturally rest it back in. So for the moment now, we may feel complete. Some of us may feel like we're on a certain rabbit hole that we'd like to continue to explore. And some of us may understand that this state that we come into can naturally be connected to throughout the day. And actually, the more we space out even small kind of moments in time through the day where we can kind of perpetually come back to this as the primary intention of our day, where nothing's more important than coming back to this and recognizing that everything that we enjoy, everything that we love, everything that we're going to experience that is of some sort of, you know, I don't know, heightened experience in some form is going to come from this place, because everything that we do is only a product of our intention or the energy we carry into it, not so much the actual, you know, dynamic of the result or what it materially looks like for all these things. Of course, you know, we can enjoy our comforts and our pleasures and all that, but they are going to be more enjoyable the more that we're coming from this place rather than looking for this place, you know, within things and within circumstances, looking a particular way, you know, or needing to look a particular way. So we can, yeah, return here however we are. If there's any reflections or comments on this process that we've done so far, then feel free to share just how you're feeling. Or if there's other questions on what we covered, then let's, yeah, let's get into that. So yeah, feel free to chat. I will share a bit more on this, on what we've done here. I mean, obviously most of us have done this a number of times before, but it's always new because really we're coming into a space of, you know, well, the spaciousness in between thought and form, which is the pure creativity. It's where pure creativity resides. You know, it's kind of like, I remember when I was a child and I would have like a really, you know, beautiful experience, let's say like with some friends, or maybe I was playing video games and I don't know, I was playing video games with friends and I had some like crazy experience happen, or I was outside and, you know, I was having some crazy experience, or maybe more recently, you know, past like 5 years, maybe on a musical jam, you know, you get into a musical flow with some people and it just takes you to some other place and you don't even know how you just created that, you know, with somebody or with a group of people or something. But I remember when I was younger, these creative moments, they happened, but you know, it wasn't all the time, right? So when they happened, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, I want that again. I remember saying that, you know, with my friends or to people like, oh, I just want to create that again. I just want to do that again. I didn't know really what it was, you know, and you know, nowadays we call it like flow state or presence or, you know, the creative state or things like this. Because that's really what it is. It's like the true communion with that inner creativity, the truest intimacy. You know, some of us experience it when we're dancing or when we're exercising or when we're doing painting or in a conversation. It can happen in an infinite different forms, but there is a very unique quality to that. And there's nothing that can be predicted about it, right? Like you experience it one time, it will never be like that again. Just like every moment's already like this. But because we've kind of got into like monotonous cycles with our life, you know, we maybe do the same things every day or we have certain routines, which is fine. But if we kind of get into states where we're no longer engaged in it, we just do it because we have to, we're just going through the motions, then life seems to seem like it's predictable and controllable, right? Because we've attempted to control it. But every time we tap back into that essentially chaotic creative essence, there's nothing about it that can be predicted. There's nothing about it that you could even have a glimpse on what you think is going to happen or what you think is going to be revealed to you in that. That's why every time you have an epiphany or every time you have like an insight or revealing about something or some sort of creative experience, it's always so fulfilling, and it's just as fulfilling as the last one. You think it's the best one ever because it was, you know, it's like every one is the best one ever because every time it's this new unfolding. of essentially you tapping into, this pure creative force. And that is, potentially the most fulfilling thing we can experience as a human in these bodies. And oftentimes it's done with other people, right? So the thing is with this process is all we're doing is we're setting the structure. All of these techniques we've done over this past year and more are we're just simply setting the structure by which that can be accessed. And so the more that it is simple and simple but consistent, right? Like I said, for me, like that chronic breathing is happening all through the day, as many times as many moments as I can remind myself to do that, or to continue to stick with it, is as it'll be done. And as that is done, then naturally we continue to ride the waves of realigning our being to that natural state, because the natural state is already there. It's not something we need to become or achieve, but it is something we have to set the context for, or the structure around, because we've simply set the structure around something else. We've potentially set the structure around drama, or around like a unstable nervous system, or we've set the structure around just things we don't really enjoy. So that has now become the natural state for a lot of people. That's why when often when someone will say, okay, well, what is enlightenment, or what is realization of the self? It is returning to the natural state. But that's like, well, that doesn't make sense. I'm living the natural state every day and it sucks. That's what a lot of people may perceive, right? So natural and normal are different things, you have to understand. Lorna, I think I fell asleep. Well, that's good too. We all need the rest, don't we? My conscious awareness was gone somehow, but not asleep. Yeah, I mean, why, when in the yogic process, the difference between a deep meditation and deep, dark delta sleep, delta brainwave sleep, there's not really much difference between the two. That's often why when we go to bed, we wake up, and especially those sleeps where we go to bed and we wake up and it's like, it was like an instant, it feels like we didn't even dream, it just happened. That's when we've hit that real deep layer of sleep, and we often feel the most rejuvenated. So the process of meditation, really, no matter how advanced we become, we'll still be humble to this, is actually learning to be able to get to those layers consciously, so that we're not losing consciousness, but we are accessing those states. And so essentially what you're describing there, Viviana, is like a form of cessation, right? A Buddhist cessation is where you've essentially connected to absolute zero. There's absolutely nothing there. There's not even a perception there. There's no thoughts, nothing. But you're still there. It's very frightening. It can be very frightening, actually, because if we think ourselves as the thoughts in our mind and everything else, even if we feel like we've gone on this path for some time, there may be still that identification. So when we tap into that, it's like, oh, what's going on? So if you're falling asleep, it's no big deal, really, because you're actually just putting your eight. Because think about this: how many people deal with insomnia? Like insomnia, or not being able to fall asleep, or trouble falling asleep. It's a huge issue, right? And that's not normal. And a lot of it is because we have the inability to do practices like this, so that we can bring ourselves down there. So if you're falling asleep, it's actually okay. It's more so now, like the difference between Viviana's comment and Lorna's comment is actually not that much different. it's like one subtle layer, right? Where you're essentially, it's kind of like you're learning to balance on the balance beam, and then you have to fall off a few times, and that's like the falling asleep. And then as you really get into those deeper layers, because that's essentially what we're doing here, we're not playing on just the subtle, like mindfulness, just observing. No, we're really going to those deeper layers. So there will be more of a tendency to potentially have a cessation type experience or fall asleep, because they're very similar. It's like a sliver that separates the two, right? So yeah.
Can I ask a question, Corey?
Yeah, sure.
So that, like, I often find that I, in quotation marks, fall asleep when I meditate. And like I used to do this in class, I would fall asleep, but I would know the moment the professor was done the class. Like it's it's in what you were doing today. Like I think I was asleep, but the moment it was ended, I was aware of that. Though I couldn't repeat anything that you were saying in between when you started and when I guess lost consciousness.
Interesting.
So I don't, is that like, someone told me that that's actually yogic nidra, like a yogi sleep, or
Yeah, yeah, it's a form of that. You can do it in a couple of different ways, like but I think the core of it is just to experiment, because it reminds me of I know when I stopped using an alarm clock and I just started practicing telling myself when I want to wake up, and I will wake up exactly at the time, right? So I often we underestimate how in tune we actually are to things, even if like consciously we, like you said, we may not be attuned or aware, right? And this is often because we've given a lot of like attention or importance to like intellect and memory, but those are just two aspects of the brain or the mind when there's many other aspects going on. So if we're more clear about intentions, and I think that would be something that could be important for you, is like if you do this style and there's that tendency where you fall asleep, is you have a clarity in the beginning of an intention or a dynamic that you're engaging, which it could be also an intentionless intention too, which is very helpful, but on your own time, because that does carry with you the whole process and through the whole way. And it's just as important like doing that before bed, right? Why is it so important for us to get a clear mind and kind of resolve things before we go to bed? Is because we're going to carry that through the whole night, right? So you can kind of see it's like, okay, well, your subconscious is basically like, okay, I've come here for a meditation, I'm going to listen, and then I'm going to be done with the group. Well, just that simple intention that you said is kind of like the reason you activate, you wake up like the moment when it's done, because you've already set that context. So to me, it kind of reminds me of like the power of our subconscious and the power of being able to kind of direct that energy, like in all our moments, because everything is kind of responding to the intentions that we carry and the context for setting for things, right? Even if consciously we may not be thinking we're aware or even paying attention to something, it's still all kind of working itself like at the same time, right? So yeah, but that is a form of Yoga Nidra. Eventually, like I was saying at the beginning of today, you're playing with those levels so that you can get it, so that you can stay consciously aware, and that's actually where you'll access like deep levels of creativity and insights and epiphanies and all kinds of stuff. Because that's where it will be. It'll be in those kind of deeper layers, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So yeah, because I remember, like I was telling you at the beginning today, where for me, like some of the deepest insights I would have is usually in those like mid-afternoon meditations, which were often like a yoga nidra, because maybe my body's a bit tired or whatever. So I would go and just lie down. And so you start getting into those states of creativity where you start coming up with the most like amazing, like whether it's, I don't know, for me, it's like, business ideas or thoughts, resolutions to certain challenges or insights on a particular topic I'm studying, or what, it could be anything, but they're so profound because you're already kind of in that subconscious state. You're already kind of tired. That's why when people are tired, they often hallucinate, right? Not often, but like when people are really in those tired states, and you start seeing or you start thinking, it's because you're tapping into those deeper realms that generally, when the body is more alert, you're kind of in that like fight or flight state. So you're not as tapped to those layers. So it can be very profound to start working there, right? And yeah, you're gonna fall asleep and stuff, but again, that's why it's important. Like for instance, as I got better at that over the years, when I would go into those meditations in the mid-afternoon, I would have a clear intention of why I was doing that, right? Sometimes it's just a rest and you just do nothing, right? It's a great meditation. But sometimes I actually wanted to figure something out. So I'd have some topic on my mind. And often what would happen is I'd start getting into those layers and I would have the most like beautiful insights of things that would happen. Then I'd fall asleep and I'd wake up and I'd forget it all like a dream, right? But the reality is that you've created that context, so that energy has been activated. So then maybe a couple of days later, I'd have the insight come back to me again because I had unlocked it, right? So you're kind of playing with these dynamics, because eventually, where you start to work it, where you can get to that level and you can stay there, then you have that constant level or consistent level of creativity that's accessed, so you won't forget it, right? Because I remember many times I'd be in that space, and maybe people experience it, where I'd have an insight, but I was too tired to get up and go write it down, or I didn't want to interrupt this. I'm like, oh, I hope I remember this. So I'm like in this state of, and then you fall asleep and it's gone. And then it comes back. It's like a dream, right? So yeah, but that's why it is good. And that's why we reflected on it. I mean, we've done it many times, but reminding everyone to write everything down. For me, I have 2 journals, like thousands and thousands and thousands of words on each of them. One of them is a daily journal that I write about everything that happens as much as I can. Anything that I think is significant, which is a lot of things. I think a lot of things are significant. And then the other one is a dream journal, right? And then sometimes I would have something else that was more of a log of like food and things like that. But I've been very meticulous in my journaling over the years, and it's so helpful, so helpful. That's what will start to help you access that. If you have short-term memory issues, right? The diet, the cleansing and diet will help with that, but actually engaging it, constantly reflecting on it, not going a day without being in that space where you're honoring these reflections, you're honoring what's coming up, right? And just sometimes just a couple notes is fine. But with the dreams, if you want to remember your dreams, just get in the habit of, as soon as you wake up, you're writing all the things down. That will keep you in that space where you start to draw the connections more, right? And this is all just kind of like a practice or a helpful support to the core of what we've been mentioning, which is being able to get ourselves into those states, the subconscious states, the brainwave states, where it's consistent. Because you can notice, I'm sure everyone here could comment, right? When you're in a more like fight or flight, your body's a bit, weird, your nervous system, you're anxious, your brain is not functioning in the same way. You're not able to access those same levels of creativity, like things aren't just naturally flowing for you. But when you come into a state of this meditation, or maybe through other forms, you start to activate a bit of that again, right? So you start to answer your own questions, you have your own epiphanies, things are just naturally flowing. And it's there, and it may exist for a period of time, but then it kind of slowly starts to go back, right? Because again, frequency level will be dropping, or the brainwave will be changing back up to like an alpha or beta level. So then you lose contact, but those same streams of consciousness are still there. Understand that, like the creativity that you have access to is still there. It's still going. It's still going, right? That's why, like, but it's like coming back into that range is kind of like when you're starting to roll the snowball. Like at first it's like, oh, like you got to really push. It's kind of, but that's the momentum that we have to be willing to go through. Like that's the creative momentum. Like it doesn't matter how creative of a master you are, everyone has to face that. Just like Michael Phelps always has to jump in the cold pool. It doesn't matter if he's Michael Phelps, still gonna get shocked by the cold water. There's no shortcut in that regard, right? Because we're dealing with so much in these bodies. That's why, I mean, why would the monks go away and meditate for decades to be able to get to these states, to lock those states in? It's possible, but it takes a lot of work, So in the meantime, we're just constantly reminding through the day to bring ourselves back to those states, And it's not about states, but it's just understanding that the practice will be able to kind of rest your structure into a conducive state so that the flower can blossom. You understand, right? It's like we're not forcing the flower to blossom, but we're understanding if we keep setting the environment, then yes, that creativity, these flows of insights, they will just flood, and I'm sure all of us know this already. I'm just reminding you, but yeah. So yeah, good question, Lorna. That kind of opened up a lot. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything else. I mean, we went through quite a few things today. Kind of basic stuff on some level, but not, I mean, you could see like when you get into it's like funny, when you get into more of these advanced layers, you go back to very basic principles, right? Because you understand that, well, it's not really about, it is about learning the complexities of reality, but also understanding that the basics of it and the simplicity of it is just getting the consistency of this reminder, like back in, and yeah, that's it. So I think we're good. I'm just gonna check and see if I have anything else I'd like to touch on from this week. Sometimes I'm going based on just I get a lot of questions in the week, and I find we're collectively kind of tuning into similar things, right? So it's good to just reflect on a couple of these topics. I was thinking about doing a separate session workshop on just victim-victimizer dynamics in relationship. We've covered that a number of times, but also like narcissistic and empath dynamic energies. which is kind of like a hot topic these days. Everyone's like whipping out the narcissism term, with everybody and blah, blah, blah. So not really coming at it from that angle of like getting too much into like the labeling side, although it can be helpful to like just have an insight and understanding of who or what we're dealing with ourselves and with others. But particularly just getting into the dynamics of the energies at play, because in my view, we each have the qualities of all of these kind of archetypes within ourselves on some level. It's just that some of us may kind of gravitate more to one than the other. And that's how we end up attracting, particular relationships or partnerships or whatever in our life. And those cycles can kind of tend to repeat themselves, as we're learning the lessons of rebalancing. But they can also oscillate, right? Where we may have tendencies of one energy, and then but then we also may have the tendencies of the other, and it could manifest in different ways and at different times, right? So yeah, because I was getting into a number of discussions with people who were experiencing relationships that were of these dynamics and how to navigate it. And it's kind of similar to what we were discussing previously about the dynamics of soft love and tough love, right? Where in our society, we generally related love with soft love, which is, gentle and kind and kind of like the mushy type of love that we tend to think of as love. But love is also tough, like a mother bear, like a parent, I don't know, like a teacher with a student, and like with ourselves, being able to be kind but assertive on particular matters, right? And so this dynamic is very much applicable and important within the dynamics of relationships that may or may not be abusive in different ways, or in all different forms, right? There's many different relationships we have, whether with partners, families, friends, coworkers, governments, organizations. There's many different layers to these types of relationships. And if we are aware of the dynamics at play of what we may have as particular tendencies and how we match up with the tendencies of others, this can reveal a lot, right? And it can, as we bring that awareness to it and essentially heal those polarities, because if we're on one side of polarity, then we will come in contact with the other to balance it out. This can be very nice, to be able to balance it out and find clarity. I'm sure, some of you have, been exploring this in different ways. And it does relate to some of the discussions I shared this week about, higher and lower dimensional entities and things like that, because it's a very real topic. And it has a lot to do with, well, how do we deal with our relationships here? So yeah, so if that's of interest to go into a workshop like that, I will put something together. We talk about it, and we have talked about it enough, but yeah, that's actually reminding me of a recording from the level 2 emotional healing course we did about a month or two ago, and we had the bonus session on just relationships. I think I'm gonna find that, because that one did cover some of these things. I just wanted to be more focused on it in a new one. So yeah, that's what I got. I don't know if there's anything else, any questions, this is your chance. Otherwise, we will probably wrap it up for today. Here, I'm going to link this little workshop.
Corey, I'm new to your teachings. I just found you yesterday on Facebook. What's the best way to know what offerings you have? Like, do you just on Facebook or?
Yeah, the sessions are ongoing. You're in the email now for the session because you got the Zoom link. So you'll get some, I don't send too many emails, but you'll get a couple of new sessions that we're doing with these. But I have a number of previous video courses from the recordings of the past little while, which I'll send to you individually. And yeah, you can explore it, in your own time on how you feel. Wednesdays we're usually doing, not all the time, but we do these just kind of like this, discourse on a topic and usually meditation. But yeah, there has been some other core course formats that are recordings now, but they're quite potent if even doing them on your own time. That just dive deeper into much of the topics that we're, exploring today. Yeah.
And one more question. Do you have experience with plant medicine? Because I'm curious about that. And that would be something, if you have experience, to have information on that as well.
Yes. Okay. Well, we can explore that. we can explore. I'll touch on it because I know the group probably knows my view on a lot of the plant medicine stuff, so I'll share it with you. Actually, I have a really good post on it that I will share.
Okay.
But you know, the core of the psychedelic dynamic is, in my view, this. I mean, every person has to, you know, choose for themselves on what they're feeling, what they're resonant. Obviously, in the new age and the modern culture of spirituality, it's become quite profound in its interest. You know, a lot of people are seemingly seeing a lot of great results or insights, or you know, maybe more consistently like blown out experiences that give them access to, you know, higher realms, higher insights of themselves, different healings. You know, I've definitely seen different healings happen. You know, sometimes in more extreme cases like heavy addictions, right, or situations where there's a kind of a real dark spiral that's happening, and it seems like when the psychedelic experience happens, it kind of opens up you know, a whole new possibility, and that potentially ignites a new path, you know, for these individuals on certain levels, right? Now, the challenge with this is, and it's, you'll see if you explore some of the other previous stuff we've gone into, is that when we look at particular experiences, especially in the psychedelic sort, in which generally tend to open up very profound levels of dimensional access. So if we understand that we don't exist just on this realm, we actually have there's many other realms that we exist in simultaneously. And when we go into these experiences, it opens us up to those realms, or to be able to perceive those realities, because the frequency increases, or the energy increases very strongly, right? So that's obviously one of the draws for a lot of people. But the issue is that when we're using particular practices or external substances to access these experiences, it's almost kind of like a cheat code or a shortcut, right? Where what we generally would have been able to, and still can, even after taking these substances, build up our energy progressively over time to be able to naturally access those states. We kind of do it in kind of like this kind of short, direct, what we think is a direct ticket. But the problem with that is it's kind of like in reality, you know, where a lot of people are really you know, say they want more in their life. You know, they want more money, they want more experiences, they want a partner, they want something, they want peace, you know, they want more of what they apparently do not have now. And that creates maybe a level of impatience, or it creates this energy of there's something that I can utilize to get me there quicker. And that's very practical. There's a realistic outlook to that. However, often what happens in that dynamic is there's a missing of what's already available here, that if that's the focus, if we take the attention away from what is externally in some direction and place the attention upon what is actually here already as step one to step two, right? Then, well, we take step one, we take step two, and then we're on three, and then we're on four, and then we're on five. And then before you know it, all of a sudden, you start to recognize that the reality that you thought was over there is actually here. And you're kind of merging them together. You're realizing, I actually have everything I need now. Through the nakedness of my body, I have all the things that I need. And through the pointers of knowledge and insights and techniques and methods through many traditions, I can access what I think is over there here through the volition of myself, just myself. And that's a very empowering way to explore the dynamics of the journey, because, well, I mean, what's more efficient, right? You know, we have to look at things in a dynamic of efficiency. So I say all this because when we take the shortcuts, we often have to pay the price. And the dynamic of psychedelic culture has, in my experience of what I've observed, is although people have a lot of profound experiences, a lot of times when the psychedelics come in, they come in for a period of time, people have the insights, blah, 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 then the psychedelics go away for a period. Now, all of a sudden, the person is left with not only the heightened perceptions that they have perceived, but the equal balance of that polarity, which is also the lower aspects or the darker aspects of self. Because when we're accessing through an external substance in a very quick manner, the heightened viewpoint of what we think is possible, we're simultaneously going to see what is limiting us from experiencing that as an ever-present reality, right? Like, it's like, well, the question is, why aren't we already experiencing that? Right? That would be the question. It's like, well, the reason would be is because there's these other aspects in the shadow or within ourselves that we're having to take a look at. So what tends to occur is there's an overwhelming amount of processing that needs to be done now. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? So it's not that it's impossible to navigate this in a balanced or neutral way. I just find it's a very risky way to engage it. And it's definitely not something that I recommend, mainly because some of the techniques we explore here and some of the stuff we pointed to, at least in these sessions, or many other teachers are, the technologies we have available today in this modern age of people coming into this space of consciousness are equal or even greater in the long term than what the psychedelic realms can bring, at least when we're dealing with consistent levels of peace and joyfulness and clarity on our path. And because we have access to these technologies, that's what I tend to point to, right? Is pointing to the methods and the processes that we can engage through our naked self, right? Just through our own awareness, our attention, our breath, our own volition, nobody doing it for us or nothing external doing it for us. And this is potentially going to take not necessarily longer, but it may seem longer because you're having to kind of, again, push that that snowball, right? And you're having to do your own work and kind of stay meticulous and focused on these core endeavors. But in the long run, you're setting up a much stronger foundation that's not at risk of coming into these higher realms and getting into things that may be a bit, too soon, which often it is. Because there's a lot of other things going on in some of these higher dimensional spaces that are, quite frankly, quite dangerous in dealing with if we're not prepared. And I see it all the time. I mean, I don't know how many times I've had people come to me in the past year having done psychedelics and then had a whole other list of things happen from that experience that weren't so pleasant. Not to say that people don't experience positive things from the psychedelics. I have. But looking at it now, the way I see it is just not something that I could recommend. But again, everyone is going to go at it in their own pace. And I think there are ways to do it in balanced ways, potentially. But I would generally point to that consideration after having to really set a solid foundation. And I don't know if that is you or not, and that may be already you, but I tend to always kind of give a bit of this spiel, as many people here have probably heard it many times, in different ways, because the only reminder I like to give to people is that you already have what you need. So when we're looking to particular tools, thinking that they're going to bring us to some place, there may be a true resonance there, but I would say, okay, it's like we put that aside for a moment. You can stay there, but let's see if we can explore these dynamics. Because sometimes, our resonance or our perception of what we think we need or what we think we want, not to make you second guess yourself, Lauren, but in the perception that sometimes we perceive something that we think we need, but it's actually a symbol for something else that we're going to come into, or something else we're going to reveal about ourselves. Maybe I'm the psychedelic, you know what I mean? Like my breath is the psychedelic. I have the access to access these realms on their own. And many people will argue with me on this, of course. I mean, I hear it all the time, but I've had a lot of experience with it. So, and it wasn't so pleasant over the course of those initial years, many years ago. Right. So it's just, coming into that reminder of the faculties we have accessible here now, and can we stay devotional to that and focus upon that and see what comes of it. And then from that place, maybe we'll still explore. I mean, whether what I tell you or not is not going to really probably change a lot of things, but at least it's being said. And I'm hopeful that people take this message seriously as I share it, and I know people have, because there's so many available methods and technologies and just insights within our own being that we can access without putting ourselves at risk of particular things. Right, that can be unnecessary. It's going to give you all the the colors and the sparkly things and many insights and things like that, but at what cost? That's often what I tend to ask. So yeah, that's my long spiel about that. Hopefully I'm not popping too many bubbles, but I missed a portion of this. Yeah, but yeah, Lorna, that's what I have to say. Yeah. Right. So, but I have some good posts and follow-ups on that. Yeah, Luke, there will be a recording. on this. But thank you for asking those questions. They're very important, and I think we all, I mean, as much as most people have heard me talk about this before, you know, we're just coming at it on different angles, because it's not just the psychedelic thing, right? Like we can essentially look at anything that we've externalized in some form as something that we think is going to, you know, do something for us, yada yada yada, and that's all fine, you know. It's like that we each have our own paths to walk, and we're gonna make our choices, and you know, it's not the end of the world, you know. Like certain things, people make a lot of things into an extreme savior or an extreme like devil. It's gonna, you know, it's gonna do something terrible. And really, if we hold perceptions on either end, then you know, it's creating an unnecessary charge. And so when we're focused on what really matters, which is the truth of our own devotion, understanding that literally in every micro moment we have the ability to elicit the joyfulness that we are seeking in any particular thing. And if we have the potential to remind ourselves of that in every moment before we do anything, which is like constant, right? So it's so meticulous in us constantly coming back to eliciting our own joy for no reason, like being joyful for no reason, right? Like what a magical thing, being joyful for no reason, and constantly coming back to that. The more that becomes the perpetual focus, we'll tend to find how many things start to fall away, right? In terms of what we believe to be, you know, kind of the next golden key for our path in some form, right? Because it's all a projection on some level. It's all a projection of this internal golden key that we have access to, that we kind of place on things. And so we have to explore things to sometimes come and remind ourselves of that, right? So, you know, we're all going to do what we're going to do, but as we're coming into some of these more advanced discussions, then we are essentially called to refine this a lot more, right? Like the detail of us eliciting joy, you know, so that we're not chasing things, and then we can stay grounded in these bodies, because that's the most important thing right now. And again, it's the reason why I don't love to point to any sort of psychedelic, because you're leaving the body a lot of time, and the body is the most sacred thing. And it's you know, that's why the microdosing stuff for me is a little bit better, because at least people are not jumping out of the body, so you can stay in the body, and sometimes there can be some nice healing there. But even still, I'm kind of, I don't know about that, but you know, I think we get the point. Most of you have heard it enough. Most of you probably, or no, the cameras are still on, so we're still good. Sorry, I wasn't looking at you. But yeah, okay. Well, that was a lot. We had a lot of great subjects. Anything else? I'm not in a rush, but you know, I know if people wanted to go about their day, can. Yeah, you're welcome. Nice. Alrighty. Well, yeah, I really enjoyed this. I'll keep you guys updated on future like specific workshops on specific topics. I mean, most people know the drill. I try and give a different theme for the week, but I mean, we all know what's up. We just show up, and you know, things come up and we talk about it, and then we meditate. It's been the same thing for many years, but you know, gotta keep it refreshing, I guess. People get bored. But not you guys. Most of you have been here, you know, a lot of the week, and it's a beautiful thing, you know. It's very nice. I appreciate the donations too. So I'll put the link there if you guys want to contribute. But that's good. Keep love to each of you. Never bored, Lorna. That's great. Awesome. I'll see you guys soon, or ladies and Luke. And yeah, look out for next Wednesday. I'm not sure yet, but quite likely. And I'll keep you guys updated on everything else. Enjoy the rest of your day or night, wherever you are. And we'll chat soon. See y'all.